Good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is Wednesday Night Sessions. As always, many of you I know are repeat viewers because we are a Farmington, Michigan based show and we've got some locals who like to keep tabs. But of course, since we moved online on, I don't know, some time ago, as I am fond of saying, time is meaningless these days. So I don't know, sometime last year we went online and now we have guests and viewers from across the nation. I am excited, though. Joining us tonight is one of our local readers. So this is Chris Crowder, a poet who is currently in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a stone's throw here from Farmington, and the site of the greatest university on the planet Earth, the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Although, as we're recording this, we did just suffer a rivalry loss in football over the weekend, but life goes on and basketball's coming soon. So, Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you for our usual format. We'll have a short reading followed by a couple of questions. And again, thank you to the viewers for joining us.
All right. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much, Mitch, for inviting me to be here. It's really special. I'm Chris Crowder. I'm a poet from Flint, Michigan, and I'm in my third year fellowship year and the MFA program at the University of Michigan. So I'm going to read 4 poems for you tonight and just thank you for listening. And this first poem is called Origin Story. Origin Story. I broke the pastor's daughter's collarbone. No, I can explain. It was an accident. I'm God's son. We were in kindergarten, dancing, spinning around, holding hands during Methodist coffee hour. Her name was Rita. A church lady told me that the devil took me over. An imperfection deserves punishment because God is perfect. I ended up in Toys R Us confused. Mom told me to choose something nice for Rita. I picked a Nerf gun. I wanted it, but we wrapped it in the car. At the parsonage, I shamefully gifted it to my best friend, who was in a neck brace watching C-SPAN on her basement couch. She opened it blank-faced, which I deserved, thanked me, and stared back off into the distance. Her father escorted us out, said, "God bless you," and we never saw them again. Next Reverend didn't have any kids, so I didn't have a friend. God, you take all of my friends, people, gentleness, happy thoughts, my best, ambition, people, mostly people. It's always been people. This next poem is called On the Street Marked Dead End, and it comes from a prompt offered by Franny Choi and Inez Smith on their podcast Versus, which I think just had their penultimate episode just there pretty recently. And this prompt asked people to just go outside during the pandemic. I believe it was sometime last year, and just to take notice of what senses you're experiencing. So this was written while I was living in Wisconsin with my then fiance, now wife, and we were walking by a horse barn and just embracing nature. So this poem is kind of talking about that and what ideas were going through my head at that moment. On the street marked dead end. Tree shadows make a long barcode. With the old shoes I reserve for outside, and my hairline like the edge of a tide, I drag through the earth. Next to the corn husks, a torn up bag of Miracle-Gro, a pile of feathers from a dove, mounds of horse manure covered in sawdust, a white fence checkered with pink roses, next to a fuzzy brown horse after it rains, stomped on worms writhing in their own slime, and a goose you can never look at in the eye. Everything on a hill, round like a belly can feel. I pick up a worm, ask it why it's on the road. Hail-dented cars nearly hit both of us. Things are always being born. In every instance of right now, someone is learning how to survive. My parents tell me to never say that the world is crazy. They say we inherit muscle memories and recipes for how to deal with the latest definition of the worst. Lord, I haven't seen another Black person in weeks. I haven't been to a good cookout in a minute, but I remember how it smells. And I remember speakers blasting Nuck If You Buck, which pumps me up to tell the sun to kick rocks. Because lately, I've only seen that star in the middle of the sky. Lately, I've guessed wrong if it will go down or up. This third one's called Throwing God a Bone. Um, yeah, it involves dogs and just imagining what it would be like to kind of create a world full of people, but with dogs, and what kind of problems and fun and love come along with that. So this is called Throwing God a Bone. Let's use a city. Yes, a city. Let's say the city planner, who is also you, tasks you yourself to fill, let's say, 50,000 homes with 100,000 dogs. Why dogs? You love dogs and you have the power to conjure puppies to bow at your feet, arriving by politely jogging from around any corner by clicking your teeth. That little tap tap of their toenails attached to their prancing feet. Nothing else has ever been as easy as this. As you move the puppies into the first cul-de-sac, hell, even the first handful of neighborhoods, you find their behavior endearing, how they seldom follow the law, which you also made, which are not too hard to follow rules, like please aim correctly on the puppy pads conveniently located next to each of the city's street signs and mailboxes. Or play biting isn't polite. Glued onto every streetlight, a flyer, play biting isn't playing nice. Or that poison ivy and playground wood chips aren't for eating, but the dumb dogs lick their lips like it tastes better than the real chicken meals you have shipped in overnight, arriving at every front door in packages insulated with dry ice. They'd rather spend hours gnawing at what's marketed as an indestructible toy, eating the stuffing out of a poor stuffed duck, hedgehog, fox, frog, another fox, a stuffed dog. At first, you talk to the dogs like a lot of people talk to babies, high pitched onomatopoeia and pinching cheeks. But then the dogs became many dogs. Many dogs became many dogs, which meant many dogs made many messes throughout the city, destroying it. You started shoving their noses into their destruction, and they kept doing it. So you kept doing it. So they kept doing it, as they gave you those whale eyes, glossed over eyes that let you know what you're saying is far beyond speaking in another language. And you still loved the dogs and kept making dogs, clicking your teeth, clicking your teeth, clicking your teeth, clicking your teeth because you love dogs. Love most of the dogs in the city, even if all of them have at least one problem: tics, separation anxiety, a Napoleon complex. And you stop greeting every dog that ran toward you from around the corner, and the honeymoon period had worn off. And you started to detest the city itself as a terrible place, a no good place for dogs. Somewhere around 70,000 dogs, you no longer wanted your power to conjure them. But you kept going because dogs kept biting your toes after you thought they wanted a belly rub or a high reward treat. But they kept gnawing at your ankles until you brought them a dog and they left you alone. You never stopped cooing over their flopped inside out ears. Now make that city as large as Los Angeles. Make the city a state tall as Florida. Then America. Then you have a world of dogs. in a universe which somebody probably wants, somebody who's never been responsible for one. And this last poem is thing you should know about it. It takes place in a space called the Prenatal Field. And in my manuscript that I'm working on, it's a place where souls exist before they're born. So that's where this takes place. And the poem is called "My Turn at the Mirror Before I'm First Imagined." Before I had skin, I hated it, the idea. Before existence, I was a faceless thing looking in the mirror at the center of the prenatal field. How my reflection was bolted down in a slab of concrete, violet concrete, the same color as the grass, the haze, with the copper hammer tethered to the frame, meant to chisel out glass that always regenerates. And I studied a conglomerate me, using the claw of the tool to etch lines into everywhere I would unlove, which was everywhere. The pockmarked burns on my belly, the follicles estranged from hair, my scratched out palms. I told him, one day you will stop using your finger to outline your body as a lover, skimming to the back of a book, and you will not kiss or hear it end. Lord, you asked me, what sense could you not bear to lose? My answer now is touch. Thank you.
Those were outstanding. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
That's the end of that last one. It hits like a. I was gonna say it hits like a hammer. It doesn't hit like a hammer because it doesn't hurt, but it's like kind of hurts. I don't know.
There's a hammer in the poem too, so maybe it is a hammer. I don't know.
That might have been what my brain just did right there. That makes sense. That's how my brain works. That would be that would be what just happened. And the first line of the first one, oh my goodness, I broke the Reverend's daughter's collarbone.
Yeah, the pastor's daughter's collarbone. Yeah.
Oh man, that's a hook. That was also a powerful line. Thank you for reading those. I'm gonna sometimes I get crafty and I sneak in an extra question. So you did mention you're working on a manuscript. Tell us about the manuscript.
Yeah, the manuscript is about inheritance and responsibility. A lot of the poems are dealing with God and parental and authority figures and wondering where what inheritances are passed down, and the speaker kind of is deciding what they want to keep or reject, and kind of thinking about what they've become and who they could become, and kind of runs through all the runs through prenatal field, runs through heaven and hell and earth, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun to write and something I'm trying to organize still, but it's just been a really fun project to dive into. And yeah.
I mean, it gets right into some of our biggest questions, right? Free will and stuff we've been pondering and debating forever, really. So, very cool. I hope it gets out there sooner than later. We'd all love to take a look at it.
Thank you.
You two questions. So one, I mean, we get on a wide variety of guests on this show. But I'm kind of curious. I don't know that we've had somebody in the middle of an MFA program before, or at least not in a while. So kind of talk to us. We get a wide range of audience members. Some are obviously fellow poets and writers, but others are just local patrons of the art. So kind of talk to us a little bit. I mean, how is working on this in an MFA? Let me rephrase this. How is the MFA program informing the writing itself? Or is it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been the MFA program has provided me like a space to kind of develop myself as a writer, and to learn how to be myself. Really, I think that's been the lesson that has been the hardest to learn, because it really fosters a place of community of like people who are going toward the same goal but have a lot of different topics to write about, um, and a lot of different professors who are going to teach you a lot of different ways to approach the craft of poetry or fiction or nonfiction, depending on what kind of MFA you're in. um, so I think that's something that the MFA has provided me with, and then also just the amount of writing that I've been exposed to, and just the world of poetry that I've been exposed to. Because before the MFA, I hadn't been diving into poetry as much as I wanted to or knew about. And this, just the people I've met there have just opened my eyes to so many different avenues and ways of approaching the craft and thinking about it, and how to approach voice or lines, or um, how I approach my subject matter, how I approach truth, um, how I approach my relationship to work, and writing. I don't know if that answers your question. I just have so many things that the MFA has just brought me to be aware of that I can't like fit it all into sentences. But I hope that I made some sort of sense in that response.
I think I absolutely think you did. um, I think it, in some ways, that was like a glowing recommendation letter for education itself, right? Like,
Mm,
what do you do in any program? It's an opportunity to explore the world and yourself at the same time, and kind of determine your how you fit in, your outlook, and
right.
intake and output, right? Like you taking, and I don't have an MFA myself. I have a teaching master's. But obviously lots of my friends have MFAs, and it
Mm,
always sounds to me like one of the biggest values is just the kind of forced range of intake. Like you have to read
right.
such a wide range of poets, and that kind of ends up informing. You have I would imagine a richer, developed, more developed sense of poetry as a field. You'll spend some time with kind of old classics and closed form work, all the way up to contemporary, more open
Mhm.
form. Like you would get that whole range that you might not get necessarily if you're some schlub like me who just reads a lot of poetry and enjoys writing and churns it out. My view is probably a good deal less informed than somebody like you, who's had that experience and range, and the same program that Jesmyn Ward went through, for crying out loud. So I
Mhm.
mean,
Right, right.
you got that.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like the MFA itself or just Michigan, in the MFA, but at least for me, I think I needed to be in something like this so I could have that wealth of knowledge. Because I do think some people, um, are able to have like um, that grounding and thirst for knowledge to kind of find that without an MFA. So I don't think it's like necessary for everybody. But I think for me, it was just really helpful to kind of give me the tools of like where to look and
Yeah.
yeah, what to be seeking out.
Yeah, I always think they sound really cool. I mean, I'm late 40s with a family. Like I'm never gonna get a chance to do it, so I'm always kind of jealous in that way of that you always have those like the life unlived kind of idea. Like, that
Right.
sounds like a cool thing. I know I'll never get to do it, but it sounds really cool. So you get that kind of jealousy is not quite the right word because I've got a great thing going here. Like I'm happy
Mhm.
with my life as it is, but it's still like it sounds like it would be cool to have that opportunity to just dedicate the time to
Right.
reading from a wide range. Um, all right. So the second question, I forgot to kind of prompt you for this before we hit record. The second question is often considered the goofy question or the silly question. So for the audience, the bit of background here is that I was actually not familiar with Chris's work until some fellow teacher colleagues of mine posted about Chris on social media somewhere. So I'm going to ask a very teacherly question of you. So you came out of Flint, Michigan with some excellent teachers because I know them, at
Mhm.
least three of them. So if you would kind of humor the teacher side of me for a minute here, how did your high school life end up informing your writing now that you're getting into writing at kind of a professional level, or whatever you want to call it, publishing your work? That tends to be a good deal different than a ninth grade essay. So
Yeah.
where are the connections between the two?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, as you said, I had really great teachers in high school and really throughout, like growing up in elementary school and middle school. I went to Carmen Ainsworth in Flint for those who don't know. And I was really just inspired by all the English and writing teachers and art teachers that I had growing up. And as I've been thinking throughout my life of like what I wanted to do, the people that I admired most were my teachers. And I was just like, especially my English teachers. And once I was thinking about that, I was like, I just loved reading and writing. It's been something that I've been doing for my entire life. And being in high school, I think I was just really exposed to a lot of classic literature, especially novels. And I was just really spellbound by works like Catch-22 and Slaughterhouse-5, and just the way that Vonnegut especially works with prose and just humor, and seems like he was having a lot of fun while writing things. And I think that's the thing I've been seeking out, is like, what can I do that was the most fun to me? And that's always been writing and reading. And I think specifically within poetry, poetry's always really confused me. And I think that's what I love so much about it. It really fascinates me. And there's a lot of poetry that I don't get that my friends do. And there's some poets that that maybe I get that my friends won't. And I think that's something that we can all find beautiful in poetry, that we're not all going to get it, but somebody can kind of explain it for us and tell us how they've been changed by it. And I think being exposed to poems more in high school by my English teachers kind of put the seed in my mind in college to keep studying poetry. And it's just been something I've loved ever since.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I could spend, as somebody with the teaching masters instead, I could spend hours deconstructing that answer. It's a great answer, and it highlights the power of teachers and exposing new voices to students and everything. It also highlights that we probably don't teach enough poetry. Like the first thing you mentioned was the novels instead of poetry, right? So I could wax poetic on that for a long time, but I won't, because I'm aware that that's for a different audience.
Right.
I won't do that to you. But that's a fantastic answer. Thank you for that. I love how it kind of connects to your first one too, though. Like in the you read poetry that you might not have thought to read, right? So again, it's kind of a second vote for reading widely, in a sense.
Yeah.
Surprise yourself as a reader, and then maybe you'll surprise yourself as a writer too.
Surprise. Yeah, surprise is a big word for me. Yeah.
I always love it when a piece surprises you as the writer. It's like you get to the end, like that's not what I meant to do.
Right.
But it did it anyways.
Right.
There's some of the most fun poems when they take that turn on you. Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you very much for joining us tonight. That was a pleasure. We look forward to this manuscript someday down the road, and in the meantime, we'll track your work down online, and someday, I say this every time, and I feel like kind of a fool at some point, like we have to re-enter the world at some point, but you are close-ish by. So someday when we restart these readings live and in person, we would love to have you down to Farmington to read to actual human bodies in a room, in addition to the online. I love the online thing. I think we're going to end up doing both at some point in time. We have this great art gallery downtown that we used to host them at. We'll get some back there. We'll also do these. We'll do it both, because why not? The world is only going to be a better place if we get more poetry into it.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you.
Here. Thanks for joining us, Chris, and viewers. Thank you for joining us again. More of season 4 coming your way soon, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thanks for being here.